Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Women Center webinar series that will provide you with tips and advice for setting your engineering or supply chain career path on the right track. I'm Jennifer Punarola, one of GE Aerospace's quality leaders within the supply chain and manufacturing, and I'm thrilled to be monitoring this panel event. This webinar will focus on a day in the life of some of our early career women in engineering and supply chain, their roles and responsibilities, how they prioritize their work, and how they approach daily problem solving and decision making. We'll have time at the end for Q&A, so I encourage you to head to slido.com and use the code TAKEFLIGHT1 or scan the QR code at the top right to ask a question of your own or vote on the questions you like the most and want to make sure we answer. But before we dig in, I want to give a quick overview of who we are as a company. At GE Aerospace, we believe the world works better when it flies. We are a world-leading provider of jet engines, components, and integrated systems for commercial and military aircraft. Our rich history of inventing the future of flight, our continual investment in research and development, and our talented and innovative people will enable us to rise to the challenge of building a world that works with industry-leading technology and innovation. Our mission statement is what you see. We invent the future of flight, lift people up, and bring them home safely. And we are everywhere. Every time I look at these stats, I get goosebumps because we truly are flying people around the world. It's a huge responsibility and one that motivates us to come to work every day and do what we do. So can you imagine every 2 seconds, we have aircraft taking off. 3 out of every 4 takeoffs are powered by GE technology. And at any given moment, we have over 900,000 people on aircraft powered by GE technology. That is huge. And we wouldn't be able to do this without a diverse, inclusive, and committed employee base. Our culture is purpose-driven. We value each other, humility, transparency, and focus. We respect and celebrate diversity. We create an environment where we lift each other up, and we invest in ourselves and each other through career growth and a myriad of learning opportunities. This webinar series is part of the culture we have created and want to continue to improve. And I hope you feel a sense of all of these characteristics as you meet and listen to our incredible panel of early to mid-career women in engineering and supply chain. So without further ado, let's learn a little bit about everyone you're going to hear from today. Starting with myself, I started my career as a mechanical engineer at Northeastern University, which afforded me co-op opportunities within GE based in our Lynn facility. I joined as an Edison member, doing 4 more rotations, and eventually moving through performance engineering into our supply chain world as a quality engineer on the shop floor. A bunch of different opportunities on the operations side where I got to travel to Italy and South Carolina, and then back to my home in Lynn, where I continued as a quality leader, and now to my current role, where I get to oversee 8 of our rotating parts and compressor airfoil shop and ensure quality. I love to bake and travel and spend time with my family. Now I'm going to kick it over to Kia so you get to know her some.
Everyone, my name is Kia Rodriguez. I am an alumni of Florida International University in Miami, and I got a dual degree before I got into the Edison program. So I actually joined GE through the Edison program, their rotational 3-year program, where I started off in Grand Rapids doing structural code analysis with the flight plan management team. Then I did a rotation with the platform software team here in Clearwater. And then my last rotation, which is my current role, is in the simulation and tools team. So I'm currently a simulations engineer, based here out of Clearwater, but I have team members in both Grand Rapids and GIQ, Querétaro, Mexico. As far as hobbies and things like that, love to cook, travel. I'm here in the West Coast, currently in the middle of a hurricane, but other than that, we have great weather. And yeah, super involved with the culture and currently the lead of a Hispanic forum down here in the Clearwater Hub. And yeah, that's just a little bit about myself. So now I'll hand it over to Luisa.
All right. Hello. So my name is Luisa Guarco. I've been at GE for about a year and 3 months now. I'm in the Edison Development Program right now. My background is in mechanical engineering, where I went to Tufts University, but I'm currently up here in Ohio, working on the LEAP product support team. So helping engines that are in the field if they have any issues. For some fun facts, I'm a really big rock climber, and oddly enough, Ohio and Kentucky has some really incredible outdoor climbing. So I do that a lot. And I'll pass it off to Molly now.
Hi, my name's Molly Triplett, and I started at GE about 2 years ago through the MEDP program. MEDP is a manufacturing engineering-based development program where you do 2 year-long rotations. And so I completed those first 2 rotations in the marine and industrial assembly engineering space, first as a process engineer, and then second moved on to a quality engineering role. Now off program, I serve as the M&I production assembly quality leader, ensuring that our shop is complying with all the GE Aviation policy and procedures for quality. Moving on to some hobbies, I do enjoy baking, playing volleyball, skiing, and of course, watching Ohio State football.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aaliyah Gregory. I've been at GE full-time for about 6 years now. I also started in one of our rotational programs on the operations side, so OMLP, which is our Operations Management Leadership Program. I did a couple of co-ops with GE as well when I was an undergrad. I went to the University of Cincinnati. So you see, and I graduated with a degree in accounting and operations management. Throughout my time at GE on OMLP, I got to get some experience as in materials as well as sourcing, as well as having a coach role, which is very unique to the OMLP program. After that program, I graduated into the supply chain, and through my passion for early career development, recruiting, in talent development, I have recently accepted a role to lead the OMLP program while the current program manager is out on maternity. So I've been doing this for about 4 months now. It's been super fulfilling. We can talk a little bit more about that later. But in terms of hobbies and favorite things, I'm a dancer outside of work. So anything dance and arts related, love that. I also have 3 kids, but they all have fur. So Bella, Milo, and Zuzu. And that's me. I'll hand it back over to Jennifer.
All right, so we're going to get into our questions now. And we do have some that we've prepared we're going to start with, and then we're going to move into the Slido questions after a little bit. So the first one, I'd really like to hear from each of our panelists on how they decided what role or program that was the right one for them, and what the program that they ultimately decided. So Aaliyah, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, it's a good question. So for me, Operations Management Leadership Program just really made sense after my experiences with GE. I knew that I wanted to do something more aligned to supply chain and operations. I am not technical at all, so not an engineering background. And so I think it was a little bit of an obvious choice for me, but I did like the rotational aspect of the program, being that I also didn't know what I wanted to be or wanted to get into just yet. So being able to rotate within our program and see different sides of the business and see different locations and be in different roles. I knew that that would is what that would afford me, as well as the unique coach role to be able to lead people. I'm a very people person, so I feel like it just made sense and aligned. That's me.
Awesome. Molly, what about you?
Yeah, so for my side, I did a couple of different co-ops when I was in college. Some were more desk focused, some were more shop floor focused. And I learned that I really enjoy being out on the floor, seeing the product get made. And so reading through the job descriptions for the different programs at GE, seeing that the manufacturing engineering development program was very shop floor based. They kind of describe it as a steel toe engineering job. That really appealed to me because I do enjoy being on the floor more. And that's how I ended up in MEDP.
Awesome. Louisa, you're up.
All right. So I knew I wanted to like try out a bunch of, so as a reminder, I'm in the Edison Engineering Development Program on the engine side. You'll hear other people talk about EEDP, but they're on different sides or like systems. So I decided to do the engine side because I knew that I wanted to like work on hardware, and like I just thought it would be really sick to like design parts that would go in an engine. And then similar to Aaliyah, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So the Edison program really affords you the opportunity to try out a bunch of different roles. You get to try out 3 different roles in the span of 2 years. And they like pay for your master's, which is also really nice. So it really just like, from my perspective, I just thought the program was really going to treat me well and was really going to build up my skills as like a young engineer to like move forward with everything. Yeah, I would need to succeed.
Awesome. And Kia, as you go to answer this one, also think about why GE Aerospace with this program and what keeps you coming back.
Yeah, for sure. For me, similar to Louisa, I was in the Edison Engineering Development Program for the system side. And for me, I come from a family full of military members, so Navy, Air Force, National Guard. So for me, it was in the sense of growing up, hearing about their stories, their traveling. And for me, it was also, I went to school for computer and electrical engineering and a concentration in cybersecurity. So kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none type of scenario. And when I was going to conferences and everything, I was kind of trying to align like, what do I like? What do I know? And where do I best fit? And that's where I kind of landed in the interview pool for the Edison program and seeing the opportunities to rotate and see different aspects that kind of align to where I kind of saw where I wanted to go with my career, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, and given those rotations and opportunities to get experience in essentially in a very evolving environment with GE Aerospace, and kind of, what I'm doing now wasn't available when I started Edison. So it's kind of like I've been able to grow into a simulations engineer that at the time I didn't think I'd be doing, what I went to school for, which is a little bit of cybersecurity. So it was kind of nice seeing the growth opportunities. And also, again, I wanted continuous education because I knew once I was a certain time period out of school, I wouldn't go back for a master's. So that was also an opportunity that, it opened doors for me even now. And it was a great experience, and it's paid off so far.
That's awesome. And what keeps you coming back?
Definitely the people and the culture and the job opportunities. So just, all 3, I think combined, you get the most of what you put in. So a lot of the opportunities I've had in Edison, being a project lead or a tech lead, not having, being 2 years out of school, not having the strongest leadership skills, but given the opportunity to showcase and build them up. I think that's a huge benefit, and also one of the reasons why I stay, because I'm in an environment where you'll hear it often where you fail fast and people understand what that means, and being able to see your strengths and areas where you can grow into that's definitely one of the factors that keeps me coming back. And just kind of inspires me to look for more opportunities, and there's tons in this company. So it's a growing experience, to say the least.
I love that. And Louisa, what keeps you coming back every day to GE Aerospace?
Like Kia, I would definitely say the people, but another one would probably be like GE's culture and their mission. Like GE is pretty committed to sustainable aviation, which is definitely something I'm very passionate about. So it's nice being in a company that really aligns with that in the way that I do. Additionally, like I like didn't really realize how much of an emphasis GE had on safety until I came here. Like obviously on their website, it's like a big priority, but like we like breathe safety, like everything's a safety concern, and you can really see that in like how we prioritize stuff and like what are the like risks we're willing to take and not willing to take, all in the name of just like making sure that it's safe, even if that means we're losing out on like money or like something's going to be delivered late. It doesn't matter. Bottom line is we need something to be safe. So I think, yeah, like sustainable aviation and like, yeah, the fact that like safety is super important. It makes it much more reassuring to fly on an airplane having worked at this company.
I love that. Love that. And just a reminder to everybody, we do have slido.com. If you want to put in your own questions as you're hearing us go through these initial ones, please do so. All right, our next question is for Aaliyah. Are there any specific projects or achievements in your career that you're proud of? And how have these experiences shaped your professional growth?
Yeah, so I would love to kind of go back to my time on program as a coach and really highlight that experience. So a lot of times OMLPs, incoming OMLPs, the coach role is always the role that is the biggest fee, or the most anxious going into it. You're just not sure, you are leading other folks, that you are their supervisor, and so a lot of times that's the first time that anyone has done that. And obviously there's a little bit of a dynamic with you being really young and going into an environment where folks have been doing what they've been doing for years and years. And so with that experience, being able to develop and coach people, build relationships with them, and really help them achieve their goals while also being in a fantastic location. I was in Clearwater, Florida at this time, was just really inspiring every day. I was also at the site. I was the only OMLP at my site, so it really also allowed me to learn and sort of sit with myself a little bit more, and I was able to inform like what my leadership style was, who I am, and who I want to be when I grow up, so to speak. And I think that piece of talent development, helping others get to where they want to be, has really informed why I'm in the position that I am in today, filling in for the OMLP program manager. So it all kind of ties into each other. So that's probably like my biggest achievement, and what I'm still kind of looking forward to in the future.
Awesome, thank you. Molly, you're up next. Can you share a specific example of a challenging project you worked on and how you successfully delivered the result?
Yeah, so when I first took over in my current role as the quality leader, I was presented with a challenge by my boss at the time. So every shop has a designated area. It's called an MRB crib, where we put non-conforming hardware in that gets pulled off the floor. And when I took over in the role, we had a crib that was full of parts and had no documentation associated with them. So my boss challenged me to get the situation under control and get rid of as many parts as we could. So in order to do this, I was very overwhelmed by the just volume of parts that we had. And so I pulled in a bunch of my coworkers and I said, hey, can we get together for a couple of days, sort through all this, and at least like stop the bleeding, so to say. And so we created a big cleanup event, went through, did all the documentation for it, and got it into a very manageable state. From there, I then went in and developed a procedure and put that in place in the shop for what documentation needs to be on the part before it can even go in the crib. And this was important to make sure that a year down the road, we don't end up in the exact same situation. And so now I've been in the role about 9 months and have been managing this project since then. And I will say we're still in a very good spot. So I'd say the big key when you tackle a problem is to rely on your coworkers and other people around you to help out, and make sure you have a good sustainment plan in place so that your hard work doesn't just go to waste.
Absolutely. MRB is near and dear to my heart. I feel that one. So Aaliyah and Kia, you guys are next here. And this is a question I actually ask a lot of people when doing interviews. We live in a world where everything is fast paced and super high priority all the time. How do you prioritize which are the critical ones to work through and manage multiple projects simultaneously? What are the strategies you've used to be efficient and be productive with your tasks? So Kia, I'll start with you.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that I've learned in my current role is we use the agile methodology. So it's a type of way to create projects or tasks in a short amount of time that are achievable. And I think in general, just being a scrum master for 2 different teams, I have to manage about 4 different projects amongst those 2 different teams. And it comes down to communication. So I talk a lot with my project leads and the project managers, and I'm just trying to understand like, hey, what are your priorities? What are your milestones? And what are we trying to fit within this small period of time? So for us, we do 3-week sprints. So the goal is in agile is you want to be able to achieve your work within those 3 weeks. So at that sense, you have to be methodical in the way of like, okay, based on people's skills, their knowledge areas, and the type of support that they can get, can we really achieve this? Because at that point, you're going to impact your project along the way. So I would say the key parts of it is communication, try to communicate deadlines, and prioritization. That's very important. You want to see which one's going to have the biggest impact, probably do that one first, or which one's going to take the least amount of time. That's what I used to do in college. Like whatever I can finish quick, let me do that fast because I can check it off my list. But I would say those are the top 2 ones for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Kia. All right, Aaliyah, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Kia, for that. I think also what I want to highlight, this is pretty new for us, but I think as we continue to move along in the company and continue to innovate, it's coming along. So we've recently announced our new proprietary operating system called Flight Deck. And so it's essentially what we had been using before in terms of lean manufacturing, lean methodology. And so for me, I am a huge cheerleader for standard work, both in terms of how to do something when and where, but then also what does your day-to-day look like for yourself? What is your leader standard work? And so when I think about projects, different projects to manage, you can definitely use your leader standard work in order to help you prioritize based on prioritization of the customer, based on value, based on impact, and being able to lay out what do I need to do daily, what do I need to do weekly, monthly, quarterly, etc., to help you really align that calendar so that from a visual standpoint, I'm a very visual person. Visual management is huge for me. And so being able to actively see, okay, this is what I was set out to do, and then kind of create your action plan from there has been really helpful for me.
Thanks, Aaliyah. I love that you brought up Flight Deck. It is our GE's proprietary way that we are operating going forward. And I know I personally have learned a ton from the tools and the coaching that we get from our leaders in this space. And sky's the limit here. Priorities is a big one for me, especially as a quality leader, really making sure that if we have concerns that we want to be investigating and what's going to impact our customer first, and really setting the clear customer driven focus through our Flight Deck fundamentals. So thank you very much, Aaliyah, there. All right, we do have 2 more questions before we're going to jump over to the Slidos. So just a friendly reminder, if you have any in your head, log into slido.com for Take Flight 1 so that you can get your questions out there. All right, our next question is for Molly. How do you approach problem solving and decision making in a high pressure situations within the fast-paced environment of engineering and supply chain?
Yeah, so my role directly supports production on a shop floor and working in assembly. That's kind of the end of the line. So we get a lot of pressure towards delivery in my role. The first thing I do to prioritize is stay in communication with our ops leaders and with our operations team to make sure I know what's the highest priority engine in the shop so that I can prioritize my projects and my tasks to make sure we're supporting delivery at that point. I would say the other thing that I focus on when I'm forced to make a decision in a high pressure situation is something that has been told to me as the newspaper test, if you've heard of it. I think it's just a really good tool because oftentimes in GE Aerospace and in many situations, decisions are not black and white. You have this gray area where you exist in. And when you're in that gray area, it's good to take a step back, think about the decision you're making, and consider if that decision were to be posted in the newspaper, how would the general public react? And if you think that it would shed a negative light on you personally or on the company, that's probably a good indicator that you should reconsider what other options are there to help make the best decision in those high pressure situations.
Thanks, Molly. All right, last question before we switch over to the Slido questions. So Kia, can you share a lesson or insight you have from a project or failure to setback that has shaped your approach for future projects in this industry?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it was during one of my Edison experiences. So like I mentioned before, it was the software tech lead. So I was a second year Edison, never thought I would lead a team. Then I got a team of, 3 people locally, 2 people in GIQ. And the setback was I was running a project in which we didn't know until after requirements that our test systems were essentially obsolete. It's something that we learned, early on in the testing and verifying process, but it was definitely something that impacted the project. And, being an Edison, I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, somebody's got to help me. So it was really nice because it was nice and scary at the same time because I was getting help from my assignment leader, which was essentially my manager, and also the PM on the project. So, we just had to discuss like, okay, what's the problem? Like, what's the main issue? It's like, okay, these tools and applications we can no longer use because of, security and vulnerabilities and things like that. And then they're like, okay, what are possible solutions? And I was like, great question. I don't know, and that's kind of like the methodology of like failing fast. And it's like, okay, if I fail fast, I have to also come up with solutions a little quicker. So it was nice because this kind of started opening my network with like subject matter experts and like, getting to know people in my group, especially in this hybrid remote environment. So, started talking to the subject matter expert, like, hey, what can we do? What are the alternatives? Then we started looking at, operating systems and, started looking at like hardware diagrams and things like that to find where we can realign the project. And then from the project standpoint, how can we realign the project to meet this milestone or move it on? And then that's kind of where I started learning more of like how we can better communicate with like individual contributors, also project leads, as far as like, here's the realistic issue, against your project goals, right? And how can we align that better? So thankfully, everything turned out all right. I kind of like left that rotation just because of, my rotation was ending. So I kind of left it in good hands. Like, you can now do your verification work, but these are all the things and the lessons learned from, these 6 months of like trying to figure this problem out. And just like overall lesson I learned is you have to be comfortable with what makes you uncomfortable. And when you get very big problems like this, where it's impacting like, there's money involved and hours and resources where, communication and being able to get support from people who have the knowledge base and being able to realize you don't know everything and you can ask for support. That was definitely the biggest lesson. And I carried that experience on me like a tattoo. Like it definitely shaped my life, that rotation. So yeah, it was very impactful.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right, we're going to transition into the Slido questions, and I believe we have at least one already up there. Awesome. Okay. So first question, and I'm going to ask my panelists to raise their hands, and who wants to jump into this one? How do you guys approach interview and application processes to get into your dream roles you are in now? All right, Louisa.
All right, sorry. Yeah, this is like a really good question. I would say like there's probably nothing more degrading than like applying for a job. It's like it's really so tough out there. But I think like my biggest recommendation is to like use honestly LinkedIn as much as possible to like get to that interview standpoint. I know that that's how I got my job, and I know that's how a lot of people got their job, of just like reaching out to people and just seeing if you can find that person who will like be that key to get you to the job you want. Because I think like blind applying, it's really hard because sometimes like you apply and the job has already been taken down, and or sometimes they never respond, which is hard. So I think just like making sure that you're talking to an actual person, super easy. You can message probably any of us, honestly, if you're interested on LinkedIn, and just be like, hey, can I set up a 20-minute call? And you know, it's really great because it gives you more information about if you actually want that job and also what are the things you should do. As for interview prep, GE is a big stand, or we really push the STAR method. You can look that up, but it's basically, I don't even remember what, what the acronym stands for, but it's like, I'm not even gonna try, but it's just like a method on like how to answer interview questions. And I think like most companies don't have any unique interview questions, especially when it comes to behavioral. So like I know for myself, I would just like look up interview questions and then try to come up with a project or a real life anecdote that would like answer the question. Also, like you should definitely make sure you're looking at the mission statement and making sure that when you're practicing to answer those practice questions, you're like hitting topics that they care about. So like safety, for example, at G is a big one. So like make sure you can like work that into your answer.
Thank you very much, Elisa. Louisa. All right. Next one. Would you recommend staying in school for a master's or joining the rotational program after graduating with a bachelor's? Who would like to take this one on? All right, I'm going to volunteer. Oh, there we go. Kia. Kia is going to be our next question answer.
Yeah, my recommendation is you know yourself better than anyone else. So if you're thinking, oh man, like, you know, either you had very few internships, like I had 2 internships, none of them were in GE, so that kind of set me apart from the candidate pool. But I knew that if I wasn't getting it, or if I wasn't getting any support from a company, I probably would not have done it on my own. And I'm sure other companies have some way of reimbursement and things like that. But I think with the rotational program, it went hand in hand. So it was kind of nice because, you know, I did get my master's through Edison, but what was nice is my classmates were in my university class. So it kind of followed you with, you know, with your journey to get your master's degree. So it really depends like what your goal is. If you want to do it now, if, you know, let's say that you get, you know, you enter a company not through a rotational program, you know, inquire about what are the benefits to get a master's through the company. But it kind of just depends on your goals and personality and how you want to get, you know, accelerated or extended education post bachelor's.
Thanks, Kia. This next one calls you out, so you get to stay on here. What did a day in the life of a GE Aerospace software engineer look like? What is a software project that you and your team are most proud of?
Oh, that's a great question. It changes. So because I was both computer engineering and electrical engineering, I got to experience a little bit of both. So my first rotation was mostly verification work, structural code analysis. Essentially, what I call that is like I was investigating other software engineers' work and ensuring that their code was hitting all of our requirements. So that was nice in the sense that I understood the code that was being created, and then I can go back and defend like, hey, your code's not hitting our requirements and we need that. So that was nice in the sense that I could analyze everything and, you know, justify my findings. I would say what I'm doing right now is probably my favorite project. So I work in the AWS space. creating essentially a lab environment in the cloud. I'm very proud of that because we automated a lot of the processes. So we saved a lot of money just being able to generate resources and things in the cloud. And it's helping a lot of our teams do continuous integration, continuous testing. And as a software engineer, it changes every day. I think today I worked on 3 different projects. The time flies. People will ask you questions. You'll get on calls. If my weeks are not filled with meetings and somehow I get work done, it happens. I just don't know how, but it's definitely all projects that have a lot of value and just a lot of technical experience. So you kind of get to learn a little bit of everything.
Thanks, Kia. So our next question, we're actually going to answer on our summary slide. So I'm going to put a pin in that one for now. And we are going to share what some of the opportunities are for GE and undergrad students there. So we'll get to that. So next we have Hannah has asked a question. What programs or initiatives has GE Aerospace led to empower women in engineering? What has proven effective in advancing women to the higher leadership roles? So, you know, I want to answer this one a little bit in that, because I am in a higher leadership role, and I have to say that there's no one clear path. You know, my starting in engineering and going into supply chain and then taking random roles that I moved around and then ultimately ended up back in quality, it wasn't a clear path at the beginning of my career. I would have never told you I would have ended up here. So what GE Aerospace does, though, is it gives you the opportunities, it gives you the mentoring and the network to allow you to have those diverse experiences and do what's right for you in the moment, in the life, and grow your career from there. So with that said,
So I think Jen is having some technical difficulties with her laptop, so we are going to keep on running. This is Alyssa Friedman. I'm in the background here, so here we go. All right, so we'll go to a lot of the speakers started in the rotational program. How was that first experience, and how important has mentorship been in your career? Who would like to address that one? All right, Molly, you got your hand up. We'll start with you and maybe move to Aaliyah after.
All right, so I guess as a reminder, I was in the manufacturing engineering development program, so I guess this will be a little more specific to that program, but I'm sure others have similar situations. So the experience overall, I really enjoyed the program. They're all a great way to see different areas of the business and get experience in multiple areas before you sort of settle into a more permanent role where you're in it for longer than a year. So I enjoyed the aspect of just getting to see different areas in your early career. In terms of mentorship, my program did a really great job of making sure they were connecting us with people in all levels of the organization. They hosted several different networking events for us to attend and also had a formal mentorship program where they would partner you with a higher level individual within your same, I guess, supply chain grouping, and really exposing you to higher level leadership within the area you were working, and create those relationships and have that mentorship from somebody who works in a space that you're currently working in. So I think the programs do a really great job, especially of connecting you with people. That's a really great perk of the development programs.
thanks, Molly. And I apologize. The weather had me stuck in an airport and my laptop battery just died. So I pivoted, I'm on my phone and I am back. All right, so I believe, did we just answer this one where it's talking about the rotational programs? I think we did.
We did, and Aaliyah,
okay.
do you want to add your flavor before we? All right, we're gonna do Aaliyah and then back to you, Jen. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so my first experience on OMLP, so the Operations Management Leadership Program, was actually very tough. Although I did have a couple of co-ops with GE prior to coming onto the program, the expectations of those on leadership programs is definitely different. And I also felt like in my co-ops, I had a better relationship with my manager. And so multiple factors coupled together led for a definitely difficult experience, which is why I leaned so heavily on my network to sort of get me through that. So when I first joined GE as a co-op, I was introduced to one of our ERGs called the African American Forum. And through that, really just found a village of folks who were willing to help in terms of, hey, so giving and receiving feedback, or this is what I heard. What does this mean? I don't know the answer to this question, and I feel like I'm not getting the coaching that I need. And really just using them as a, you know, a shoulder to lean on, but then also give me the coaching that I felt like I wasn't getting in that space. And that definitely happens, and you know, can be one-offs as well. Because after that first experience, I was very strategic in where I wanted to go and what teams that I wanted to be on. And it's really had just like skyrocketed my experience from there. Awesome managers, awesome experiences, really supportive teams. And yeah, so I definitely leveraged my village and my network in that, and mentorship was pivotal. So you can find it in more formal and informal ways, depending on the various opportunities that we have at GE Aerospace.
Awesome. So we are nearing in towards the end of this. So I do have one more question for all of the ladies on the panel here. And Luis, I'm giving you a heads up because we're going to start with you. So what advice do you have for young women looking to enter engineering and supply chain industries, and how they can better position themselves for success in their career?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I think, like, you know, there are the obvious things like going to career fairs, like doing research on like the companies, but I really do think like the best way is to like reach out to people through LinkedIn or through email, or just, you know, let people around you know what you're interested in, so that they can like direct you to who the right person to talk with is. Um, I think like, yeah, like using the village around you, like using those connections, is really like a great way to like break into a field that maybe like historically didn't include you. I also want to say like, I don't know if we mentioned this too much, but GE has a lot of these things called ERGs, which are employee resource groups. So if you identify as like part of the LGBTQ plus community, or like a woman, or like First Nations, or like any sort of like identity like that, GE has those groups. And so one creative way, and also this is like a thing that like a lot of companies have, one creative way could be like on LinkedIn trying to find someone who is part of like an ERG that you identify with, because it just makes it like that one level that's a little bit more personal. And so you can ask for like more advice rather than like careers like directly, if that like is something that makes you feel more comfortable.
Aaliyah, what about you?
Yeah, so I would just say be yourself, and not only yourself, but the best version of yourself. And kind of what I wanted to highlight for everyone on the call here, if you haven't heard the PI model, I would just look that up and just really emphasize the importance of the E, which is exposure.
Absolutely. Molly, any last thought?
Yeah, I would say, especially early in your career, it can be intimidating to do so, but I would say the biggest piece of advice is to take initiative and just be a doer in your role. If you see a project that needs done, don't be afraid to take ownership of that, even if you're the newest member on the team. That will go a long way with how people treat you in the workplace and how they value your work ethic.
Great. And Kia, you've got 20 seconds here.
All right. Yeah, my piece of advice would be get involved, find those opportunities, volunteer for things, even if you don't know what you're doing, someone will always teach you. And your ERGs and those communities are always there to help. And that's probably where you'll meet your next opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Really appreciate, all the insights that you provided on this panel. And I hope everybody listening into our call today enjoyed what they had to say. This is just the start of what we hope will be your engineering and supply chain career. And maybe it will be with us, and hopefully it will be with us. And this along with the location of the recording, will be emailed to you after the event. Be on the lookout for the email from either an aerospace early careers at ge.com mailbox or an email from the GE recruiting team in the Phenom in the next 24 hours. In terms of staying engaged with GE Aerospace, we hope you want to. As such, here's a few opportunities to highlight. Join us again in a few weeks for part 2 of this conversation on October 17th. The link will be shared in the post-event emails I talked about earlier. Apply for our Engineering Systems and Supply Chain 2025 intern or co-op opportunities. We have created learning modules that are on demand for you to learn about what it's like working at GE Aerospace, and we'll hope you check them out on your own time. We're going to be at the SWE and the SHIP national conferences this fall, and we'll be at NSBE in the spring next year. And finally, we have an amazing experience called LIFT, Leaders Innovating Flight for Tomorrow, that will provide selected students an all-experience paid trip to Cincinnati, Ohio, our headquarters at GE Aerospace, next summer to be immersed into our company, culture, and community. If you're interested in inviting the future of flight and wanting to work in an inclusive environment, please consider expressing your interest. And thank you again for joining us today. Thank you to all of our amazing panel of women engineers, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.